So we're going to take a look at a modelled write of a bar graph, a very common question type within IELTS Writing Task 1. So we'll be going through a full live answer of a bar graph. So let's begin. Let's take a look at our question. The bar charts show the types of holiday accommodation chosen in 4 British countries during 2010. Summarise the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so back to our topic sentence in the question. The bar charts, so I'm assuming there'll be a few of them. Types of holiday accommodation, I guess hotels, caravans, hostels, bed and breakfasts. I can't think of any more right now. In 4 British countries. Well, being from Britain, I know that will most likely be England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales during 1 year. Okay, one thing I want to remind people of, the topic sentence, our first sentence in the question, is important. Our second sentence, which is always the same, is also important, just to understand. Select and report main features. We need to do that to achieve our task achievement band descriptor. Make comparisons. So they're the really 2 important things. Report main features, make comparisons where relevant, when it makes sense to do so. Okay, let's take a look at these bar graphs then, these bar charts. So there we have it. Looks pretty straightforward. So begin with the title, Holiday Accommodation Chosen by the British in 2010. We have England on the left, followed by Scotland, Wales, then Northern Ireland on the x-axis of our bar chart. On the y-axis, we have percentages up from 0 all the way to 60%. Take a look at the key, please. We have 4 types of accommodation. Let's see what I got right. Self-catering, which means probably a cottage or a house that you rent and you cook your own food, self-catered. We have a caravan, a very British type of holiday accommodation. Then we have camping, I think I said that. And we also have hotels, of course, very popular indeed. So just taking a look at this and getting a bit of an understanding. First thing that springs to mind, possibly useful for the overview once we get to our plan. Hotels, super popular. Pretty much in all countries. That could be a great piece of information for my overview. Okay, before we write our plan, I want to show you some important language to review and remind yourself of. So here's some vocabulary for graphs and charts. So that could be bar charts, line graphs, pie charts, whichever it is. And of course, taken from one of the courses, my IELTS courses. And it's just some interesting language, an interesting visualization to remind yourself of the verb plus adverb structure. So on the left, we have going down, sank, plunged, decreased, dropped, fell, declined. All these verbs for going down, the trend going down. Then we have no change, plateaued or stabilized. And of course, we have the trend of increasing, rocketed, surged, increased, grew, rose, and climbed. Of course, we're all in the past tense here. And we can plus this with the adverbs in the blue box on the right. And we go from a really quick, a huge change rapidly all the way down to just a small change slowly. So really important that we have a good understanding of all this vocabulary. And it's super useful when we're writing too. It might be wise, if you haven't done this in IELTS Writing 7+, to bookmark this now and have a go at using it in your writing too. Okay, so back to the question and the plan. So here is my plan, and I think it's time that I start grouping and thinking of my overview now. Okay, so let's begin with group 1, of course. So how would I go about grouping these countries? Remember, when we group, we want to keep it super simple as possible, really. So how can I group the data in front of me? Well, my first instinct is to have England versus Scotland as group 1. And group 2 could be comparing Wales and Northern Ireland. Or I could also do, and remembering I can't group by time, we only have 1 year, I could also group by type of accommodation. Self-catering and caravan in group 1, and camping and hotel in group 2. They both could work. But ask yourself when you group, what is the most simple method of grouping? What would be the easiest for the examiner to understand? Key point. And I think England and Scotland for group 1, purely because they're next to each other on the graph. No other reason. It just makes sense for me. And Wales and Northern Ireland. Now, it would also be true that the examiner will be able to see this. So if you're grouping these two together in your answer, kind of makes sense for the examiner. It's not grouping England and Northern Ireland, and he maybe or she maybe is sort of thinking, why are they grouped like that? It makes sense to group like this in our detailed paragraphs. Okay, so there we go. So I've got my grouping, super important, and my overview. Now let's just consider a couple of ideas here. So I'm going to, obviously, before I said the first thing I noticed without reporting too many specific figures is to say that hotels are the most important, the most popular type of accommodation in all countries. I'm not giving any figures, which I try not to do in my overview. I just give the overall picture. Is there anything else that we could say? Nothing really comes to mind. We can use 1 or 2 sentences for the overview. Generally 1 is okay as well. There's nothing here that strikes me other than self-catering is quite popular in these 3, but not Northern Ireland. Possibly could mention this. Is there anything that's not popular really? I could say camping is generally considered not so popular. But not so much because caravans here. So I just think basically to say that hotels are the most popular. Hotels most popular. Now remember, this is obviously a slow example of writing our plan. And you'll notice as I'm writing and obviously talking to you about this write-up, this report, I'm analysing the data straight away. I'm understanding some of the information I can see. And this is why a plan is super important, because it automatically makes us understand the visual information. So this is really all I want to say. I just want to say this. Hotels are the most popular. There's nothing else that really strikes me here. I can't see that one country likes going on holidays more, for example. I think that would be it. Okay, so my plan is complete and it's time for us to begin our writing. And here we are. So as you can see, I've also added this information here, our key vocabulary for bar charts and graphs of all sorts, just as a reminder for myself as I write. Of course, the more I use this, the more it becomes natural. Okay, so let's begin with our writing. Of course, the first thing I need to do is to paraphrase my introduction. So just take the topic sentence from the question and rewrite. Okay, the bar charts. So let's begin. The bar charts. The given bar charts. I always use given just to mix it up. The supplied bar charts. I could put bar graphs to just make it a little bit different, but really a bar chart is a bar chart. That's fine. The supplied bar charts show. Let's use illustrate, display. I always use illustrate. Let's try and be different today. Display the types. What else can we say for types? The modes, possibly. The modes, the types. The modes I'm going to use of holiday accommodation. accommodation. Enjoyed, I will say. Enjoyed, it doesn't have to be that that means that they, let's change this, sorry, accommodation. Enjoyed, I still spelled that wrong. How did I spell that wrong? Enjoyed, chosen, purchased, used maybe would be better. Enjoyed could also work. Used in 4 British countries. In the 4 countries of the UK during the year 2010. Pretty much says exactly the same. It does say exactly the same as this, but with slightly different language. Let's read this back. The supplied bar charts display the modes of holiday accommodation used in the 4 countries on the United Kingdom of the UK. Good job, I'm editing. Of the UK during the year 2010. Perfect. And now onto my overview. Now, one thing I refuse to do is to change my overview opener. Overall, comma. I really do like using this. Overall, we can see that. Pretty much always can start my overview with this. Overall, we can see that hotels were the most frequented, which means attended, which means that visited, were the most frequented holiday stay in all countries. Now here, stay, I'm really trying not to use accommodation too much. I feel like I might repeat myself here, so I'm going to start trying to think of different ways to say this. Let's read this back. Overall, we can see that hotels were the most frequented holiday stay in all countries. Perfectly fine. Gives the big picture. Doesn't give any figures though. No numbers or percentages given. Just gives the overall big message of the data. Okay, so let's begin with Group 1. And you remember that Group 1 is England and Scotland. How can I explain this information so that it makes sense, so that it's in order and I don't miss too much? I could go from blue to green to orange to red. Blue to green to orange to red in order to compare. That does make sense. And maybe I could start with the highest and work my way down. But I'm probably just going to go from hotels and describe the rest. So let's say in England, over, we could say around. So we can't see the exact figure, but it looks about halfway between 50 and 60. Around 55% of holiday makers chose hotels in comparison to around 50 to about 52% in Scotland. Again, I'm repeating myself from the overview, the highest proportion in both countries. And then I'm going to probably go on to blue, which looks to be the second most popular choice in both. The second most popular accommodation, stay, lodging could work. The second most popular lodging was self-catering in both countries at 30% in Scotland and just slightly less at 27% in England. Okay, so now we can see that we have significantly lower, or we could say, looking at our vocabulary here, we could say these figures sank significantly for both caravans and camping. So just trying to use that. These are really better for trends. So trends are better on time, but we can still use them for this kind of bar chart in a single time period. So we could say these figures, let's say plunged. And then we probably don't want to say moderately. We're not going to say speed because speed is over time. We need an adverb of amount. So moderately would be it. Significantly, I think, would make sense. Significantly for both caravan and camping holidays in both countries. Now, I'm going to show you something that is wrong. Sounds strange? It is in a way, but I just want to make this important point, and I often see it in people's writings. So I'm just going to write something now. I want you to think what is wrong with this. Let's just read back what I have so far. The figures plunge significantly for both caravan and camping holidays, plural of course, in both countries. Okay, so what am I doing wrong here? Most probably due to weather and let's say outdoor and weather and cold and coldness. Not great English, but it proves a point. Okay, so the figures plunge significantly for both caravan and camping holidays in both countries, most probably due to weather and coldness. Okay, so what is wrong with this sentence here? So I do see this happening at times, and I just want to go back to the question here. Summarize the information, so report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. At no point does it ask you to guess reasons for the data you can see. All you need to do is to report the data. So there's no need for me to give a reason on why I think the data has happened. I don't know, I'm just guessing, so do not include anything like that. The figures plunge significantly for both caravan and camping holidays in both countries. I want to quickly give the percentages. I don't want to then go into another long sentence, as I think I'm probably getting, from just looking at this so far, I'm probably getting to about the right size for my paragraphs here, especially my detailed paragraphs. So I'm just going to say the figures plunge significantly for both caravan and camping holidays in both countries at between, let's find the lowest. It looks to be around 16%, at between 16%. This is in this sort of caravan and camping here. And then also, quite interestingly, which looks to be easy for me, is this camping and caravan here is at around 12%. Oh, and here I made a mistake. At 6% for these here to 12%. At between 6 and 12% for each. Now, I'm not going into too much detail here. I'm not saying exactly which of these holiday types and in which country is at which figure. I'm just giving a bit of a general statement. The figures plunge significantly for both caravan and camping holidays in both countries at between 6 and 12% for each. In any country, in both countries. I could add that, but I'm just going to leave that as I've already said it. It gives a good enough idea of caravan and camping holidays. I'm reporting the main features, of course. Okay, so that's England and Scotland done. Let's have a quick read back. In England, around 55% of holidaymakers chose hotels in comparison to about 52% in Scotland. Hyphen, love that punctuation. Again, the highest proportion in both countries. The second most popular lodging was self-catering in both countries at 30% in Scotland and just slightly less at 20% in England. The figures plunge significantly for both caravan and camping holidays in both countries at between 6 and 12% for each. Okay, so group 1 is done. Nice detail here. So I'm probably going to begin in a similar way and describe this in a similar way. Let's say hotel. Hotels were the most popular in Wales, and I'm not going to write. I'm going to use an abbreviation here for Northern Ireland and type NI because it's a bit of a long word or double word. Wales and NI at, let's say, around 48%, and that's Wales 48%, 49%, that's okay. And let's say 45%. Respectively. Always good to use at least once in our writing. In a similar way, hotels were the most popular in Wales and Northern Ireland at around 48% and 45% respectively. In a similar way, a great way to make comparisons between groups or sets of data. Okay, so up next, I can say that maybe I can talk about, we can say in Wales, the second most popular was self-catering, although this was one of the least popular modes in Northern Ireland. Let's write this in. In Wales, the second most popular accommodation. Have I used that in the previous sentence? I haven't. The second most popular accommodation was self-catering. Whereas, I keep misspelling here, accommodation was self-catering, whereas the second most favoured choice, I'm using paraphrasing here, I don't want to say second most popular again, the second most favoured choice in Northern Ireland was caravan trips. So I'm not giving, I haven't given the percentage here. I could do, in Wales, the second most popular accommodation was self-catering. You know what? I will with brackets, and I'm going to say here 28%. I quite like using brackets in my writing. It definitely adds a little bit of flair, a little bit of extra sort of showing off your skills. So do try and use them a little bit. Of course, do not overuse it. Let's go back. In Wales, the second most popular accommodation was self-catering, 28%, whereas the second most favoured choice in Northern Ireland was caravan trips. And I'll use brackets again. 30, it looks to be 31%. Okay, so I'm definitely coming up to about that 150 mark just by looking at it. So, you know what I'll do? I'm going to speed this up a little bit and just sort of, probably in a similar way, just say that both, we can say in Wales and Northern Ireland, caravan and camping, or I could maybe just say in Wales, caravan and camping were the least popular between, and in Northern Ireland, these two were the least popular between. Kind of just speeding up a little bit because I need to be careful on time. In Wales, the two least popular types of lodging, I'll use lodging again, were caravans and camping between, let's say, 8% to around 13%. In Northern Ireland, both self-catering, and here I can see they're the same amount, so I'll mention this. Both self-catering and camping were, let's say, the joint third popular choices at equal 12%. Let's just rewrite this a little bit. In Northern Ireland, both self-catering and camping were the joint third popular choices at equal to 12% each. Okay, so just sped up a little bit for the last two sentences. Let's read back to ensure that I have not made any mistakes grammatically. In Wales, the two least popular types of lodging were caravans and camping, between 8% to 13%. In Northern Ireland, both self-catering and camping were the joint third least popular choices. Let's add this in. Least popular choices at equal to 12% each. Great, so I've really given some good detail at the end there. Let's take a look at the word count. Okay, so my word count is, as I have checked, stands at 178 words. And I would say that really that's about the ideal size of a Task 1 report. If we're sort of at 152, it's almost too short, maybe not enough detail. Over 220, it's starting to get long. 250, maybe that's far too long. And of course, within the 20 minutes, we have to have finished all of this, from receiving the question to writing a plan to creating our full report. It gets easier with more practice. So again, here we have a really strong answer for a Task 1 report for bar charts. Of course, you could write your own. So you could maybe screenshot this with the question and try and write your own and then compare to me. That would be a great activity for you to undertake. Okay, so let's move on to our next lesson.